Hello and welcome to High Spirit Bag's travel vlog. Now, this is a really amazing video as we're just about to land in Israel for the first time and we discovered so many new things about Israel that we're so excited to share. As you can see, we were up in the air on a last-minute flight that we had booked with Woods Air. We'd snagged a cheap deal and paid just £255, which is around $330 for a return flight from London Luton Airport to Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv. This was a really exciting journey because we had never seen Israel, and I personally was so excited. I'd heard so many things, both good and bad. Some people who we told in terms of our friends were really scared for us, but others were just intrigued, and so we wanted to discover what Israel as a whole had to offer as a country. As you can see, we started off our adventure in Tel Aviv, and we decided to use the city as our base from which we would travel and explore Tel Aviv city, but also other parts of Israel including Jerusalem, Jericho and Ramallah. We found a cute and cozy Airbnb studio apartment in the Florentine neighbourhood. As you can see, this neighbourhood is super edgy, and really the closest comparison as a Londoner that I can think of is Shoreditch, which is in East London. On the surface, it seems somewhat rough and tumble. There's lots of graffiti and you can see hole-in-the-wall types of shops, but to be honest, it's really where it's at. This is because, just like the Shoreditch part of East London, the Florentine neighbourhood in Israel, Tel Aviv specifically, is actually a really hip and trendy place. There's so many cheap bars, clubs and restaurants around. The area is also a 5-minute taxi ride from the more fancy and upmarket Nerve to Zedek area, where you're going to find places like the Intercontinental Hotel, the Hilton Hotel, there's the Promenade. So this area is really fancy, but also really pricey. So I would really suggest going for the Florentine neighborhood when you're thinking about where to book in somewhere like Tel Aviv. So, just a little bit of history about Tel Aviv itself. Now, Tel Aviv is actually Hebrew for Hill of Spring. And when it was established, it was the first all-Jewish city in modern times. Originally named Azuat Bayit, it was founded by 60 families in 1909 as a Jewish neighborhood near a port area called Jaffa, and in 1910 it was officially called Tel Aviv, so the name was officially taken from the Hill of Spring in Ezekiel in the Bible, chapter 3 verse 5, and it's also from a reference in Herzl's novel, and in his novel he foresaw the future Jewish state as a socialist utopia. Now, without going too much into the history of it, when we think about modern Tel Aviv, one of the things that's really worth knowing and bearing in mind when you're thinking about staying in Tel Aviv is that it's Israel's second largest city after Jerusalem, and it has roughly a population of about 380,000 people. And among the city's problems it shares is its traffic congestion. So one thing that I did find really interesting is that, as you can see from this video, the streets seem really empty. We were there during a really quiet time in the summertime. However, from speaking to different people who lived around the city, they would say that traffic could get really crazy once everything kick-started after the summer break. Now, although some parts of the city seem sometimes a little bit drab, as you can see here, the beauty of the city also lies in its edginess. It seems really quirky in some places, and one thing that I found that's really intriguing, and especially what we found when we were traveling through the city, is that it's a mix of the old and new. So you have the old side of the city, which of course, for example, when you start off with the port, which is Jaffa, is very old, very historical buildings, but then of course you have the new side of the city, which is really modern architecture, very cool infrastructure. So sometimes in different pockets of the city you would find them really literally coexisting. So as you can see, we are walking and then literally on one side of the road you'll find fairly old buildings, very low squat buildings, but then on the other hand you literally see tall skyscrapers. So I believe Tel Aviv is such an intriguing city, and it's a city of so many contrasts. Also, one of the things that I found really amazing about Tel Aviv is that it's so easy to walk everywhere. Now of course, as a Londoner, in London City, when you go there to visit as a tourist, it's fairly safe and easy to walk around. However, we have travelled to other places and it can be really challenging to find places that are pedestrian friendly. Also, a final thing that I really loved about Tel Aviv is just how safe it is, in addition to being pedestrian friendly, to just walk around. As you can see, the streets at night are so easy and you feel really at ease as you're walking through. So it's also a really incredibly safe city to explore during the daytime, but also at night. Now let's talk about the nightlife in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is amazing. There's so much to do in the evenings. Actually, one of the things that you find is there's so many hole-in-the-wall clubs, places where there's just a little tiny door and then you open and it's packed. There's just so much. Also, as you can see, there is a lot you can do in terms of going to watch performances, seeing all of these different amazing artistry in action within Tel Aviv. So this city is amazing. It's full of life and you just can go on so many different adventures in the evenings. Of course, during the day, you can go and have fun, and at night, you're literally never short on things to do. As you can see here, we'd also gone to watch a performance that was staged in one of Tel Aviv's many theatres. It was a really intriguing performance. I can't quite remember what it was about, but as you can see, the art scene and the cultural scene is really thriving in Tel Aviv. We'd also paid the equivalent of, I believe, $10 to go and watch this on a really last-minute basis. And so this is just an example of some of the different types of things that are around in Tel Aviv. You will literally never be short on activities, both during the daytime and in the evenings. Now, we then decided to use Tel Aviv, as I've mentioned, as our base of operation. However, we did go and tour the city of Jerusalem. Now, a little bit of background about Jerusalem itself. It's a city located in Israel, of course, and it's considered by many to be one of the holiest places in the world. It's also a site of major significance for the three largest religions, which is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And of course, both Israel and Palestine have claimed Jerusalem as a capital city. Now, I found this day in particular to be really intriguing. In terms of logistics, we had booked a day trip to Jerusalem, and it's only about a 50-minute to an hour car ride from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, depending on traffic, and of course depending on where in Tel Aviv. So we took a bus from Florentin, and when I say bus, I mean this is part of a tour company, and this tour company essentially took us all the way to the holy city. Now, this city is beautiful. In terms of its history, it's been destroyed and rebuilt over thousands of years as a result of different conflicts. However, its spiritual magnetism endures. The span of the city is fantastic. It's so striking. And there's of course the old city, which is a spiritual lightning rod, which is sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. Now, we saw ourselves in some ways as pilgrims, essentially going to visit Jerusalem. And of course, there were so many things to do. We began our tour by visiting the magnificent Church of the Holy Sepulcher. Now, when you go and visit it, it's vast and it's massive. It's got so much history and so much memory. Now, it has 4 magnificent arches, and their intals have really rich decorations, which of course have crusader crosses. And these arches herald the entrance to one of the Christianity's most sacred sites. Now, this church is believed by many Christians to have been built over the biblical Calvary or Golgotha, where Jesus was nailed to the cross. He died and then he rose from the dead. And for the past 16 centuries, pilgrims have travelled far to worship here, including ourselves. And it can be a really, really busy part of town. Now, of course, this church is located within the old site of Jerusalem. Now, it is really tightly enclosed within a courtyard, and it's at the edge of the Christian and Muslim quarters, and the church appears to really suddenly rise out of nowhere as you walk through this area. It's perennially packed with tourists and pilgrims, largely because it incorporates the final 5 stations of the cross, and when you do go and travel, you find people from all walks of life that go there. Now, of course, there's several stations which follow Jesus's walk before he was crucified. And as you can see, this place is filled with so many rich ideas, rich memories, which are really, really powerful for any new visitor. And as you can see, this place is a mix of different religions and different people. And of course, you as a tourist will be mixing and mingling with lots of the locals. Now, in terms of places where to visit when exploring the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I'll go through a few of them. The first to consider, of course, is the Chapel of Adam. Now, when you do enter this chapel, from the entrance you should begin your sightseeing tour by taking the steps that lead down the north side of the Greek Orthodox chapel, which you'll also find left cleft in the rock. The chapel gets its name from the legend that Adam's skull was found under the cross at Christ's crucifixion. Another place to consider is the Chapel of Calvary and the Chapel of the Holy Sepulchre, which of course is what I've mentioned. And of course, as you head west in this old part of town, you pass the stone of unction on which Christ's body was said to be laid and anointed after his crucifixion. Now, of course, don't forget to visit the Angel's Chapel, and there's a stone on which the angel who announced the resurrection of Christ to the Holy Woman is said to have sat. Another place to consider to visit is the Chapel of the Copts and the Chapel of Jacobites. Other areas to consider in terms of this religious pilgrimage is Chapel of St. Helena. Now, to draw your attention to the beauty of what we can see here, a lot of the religious areas, and of course here this is the Chapel of the Resurrection, are so richly decorated. And of course these rich decorations come from centuries and centuries of different crusaders and different rulers who have richly decorated the interiors of these places. So one thing that you're going to be struck with as you follow these different churches and chapels in these different areas through the old part of Jerusalem is just the rich history and the rich beauty of the area. So as you can see here, I want to draw your attention to the final place where Jesus' body was laid to rest. As you can see right at the center, there's a large area that's really walled off, and it's believed that Jesus' body, after he was laid to rest and after it was anointed, was finally put to rest within this area. We unfortunately weren't able to access the interior of the area because it was just so busy and the queues really do snake on. But as you can see, pilgrims from all around the world make this journey because it's such a fundamentally important journey, particularly for Christians, but equally for people who are of the Jewish faith and even of Islam, because don't forget, when it comes to Islam, Jesus was indeed seen as a prophet. However, the journey through the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was powerful. So as you can see here, we carried on touring through the old city of Jerusalem. So just to clarify, the old city of Jerusalem is divided into 4 quarters. There's the Jewish quarter, the Armenian quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Muslim quarter. It's a walled city, which you can enter by one of 7 entry gates. And although the busiest site for tourists is the Jaffa Gate, which is next to the Tower of David Museum, there is so many ways to enter this, and as you can see, the quarters are really narrow and they have each their own unique atmosphere and observations, sights and smells, as well as experiences. Now, on the one hand, for instance, you've got the Jewish quarter, where there's narrow alleyways that are lined by homes of ultra-Orthodox Jewish families and yeshivas, which are schools for Torah study. And walking around, you can observe the residents of the Jewish quarter go about their daily lives. Now, the Jewish quarter's narrow alleyways always open up as you reach the Western Wall, which you're going to see shortly in this video. And at times of Jewish festivals, the wall can be really crowded. Now, within this old city, there's of course the Muslim quarter, which is a huge contrast to the Jewish quarter. Its streets are busier, more crowded with vendors, especially within the famous shuk, which sells a variety of products. This is in contrast to the other quarters, where shops are generally selling religious and tourist items. Now, as I've mentioned, you have the Western Wall itself, and you can see it from this site. Now, at times of Jewish festivals, this wall can be crowded, and when you observe the tourists brushing alongside daily prayers, there's a really interesting sight. Now, as you can see here, the Western Wall is divided according to genders. If you're a woman, you can only go to the side which is designated for females, and if you're a man, you can only go to the side which is designated for males. There is no mixing of genders. Now here, it's a really, really vastly religious experience, and therefore, for instance, when you are considering going there, you should really make sure you take the effort to cover up, especially covering up shoulders, covering up ankles, and not wearing anything that's too revealing in terms of your body. Now, the Western Wall can be accessed via several entry points, and there's so much to see and do. However, do bear in mind that you always have to approach the place with a lot of respect for those who are coming, because this is also a site of prayer for people that live there. Now, as you can see, after visiting the Western Wall, we headed back through the old town. Although we were there for just a day, there is so much to see within Jerusalem, and I don't think 24 hours is enough. It's a good idea to go there for at least 2 days, if not more, because there's so much to see. So that's all. If you found this video useful, do remember to subscribe to this channel and give this video a big thumbs up. Also, visit www.highspiritbags.com. There you can find lots of travel accessories and travel tools that you will absolutely love to accompany you on your travels and adventures. Thank you so much for listening.